On Power 98.7.
And really, you shouldn't be listening to me, but to Nelson Chamisa, who is the president of the Citizens Coalition for Change in Zimbabwe, opposition leader, presidential contender, former MP, a lawyer by training, theologian by training, and a voice of the youth, a voice for change in the country. So, Nelson Chamisa, you were giving us your views on what you think is at the heart of what we see as an immigration problem, what you regard as a governance issue.
Indeed, I must re-emphasize the point that as far as we are concerned, thanks for your attempt to get across to me. The real issue in Zimbabwe, the real issue in SADC, in South Africa, is a governance crisis, a deficit of good governance, a political instability issue, an issue to do with a vicious cycle of disputed elections, and of course the economy that is tanking because of the politics that is sinking. And this is what has to be corrected. If we don't correct the real issue, we'll end up dealing with symptoms and not addressing or attacking the root cause of the problem. It is corruption, stupid. It is politics, stupid. It is bad governance that has caused the problems that we are seeing in the region of SADC. And that's why Zimbabwe has now become a talking point for the rest of the region and indeed the continent. We need to fix the problems, and these problems cannot be solved by burying our heads in the sand like an ostrich.
I mean, by now I'm sure you've seen that very controversial video of a South African provincial health minister in Limpopo berating a patient in hospital for being Zimbabwean in a South African hospital. And something she said there, very rude, I have to say, from where I'm standing. But in any case, one of the things she said is, when you go back to Zimbabwe, tell Mnangagwa to sort it out, basically, is what she said. And many people have said, is the leadership of Zimbabwe, is this government aware of just how serious this issue has become for neighboring countries, where the burdens on the public health service and the social systems in these countries is just too hard to bear, shouldering the weight of problems in Zimbabwe but elsewhere?
Well, indeed, it's clear, and ZANU-PF would know, that their excesses, their omissions and commissions have literally caused nightmares and problems for our neighbors. We are exporting our burdens, we are exporting our hardships, we are also exporting our foolishness, and even in terms of how we treat each other, there is a lot of challenges around our politics. Violence is big, intimidation is big, terrorism is big, corruption is big. And all these things are now affecting our neighboring, partners. I've listened to people who say the MEC was supposed to say this and that. But look, even if she had not verbalized or vocalized it, what is clear is that this is a shared sentiment in South Africa, within the region, on the continent. And the fact that she said it, probably she helped, because by hearting out, by voicing it out, it is now a cause and case for debate. And of course, not beyond debate, not just debate, but beyond debate, we should be able to then find a common solution. And this is why we have said, let's forget about the context. Let's forget about the unfortunate circumstances within which this statement or these sentiments were shared. Let's look at the substance of what was shared. And I think it's fair to say we as Zimbabweans are better also in our own country, bar the fact that, these colonial boundaries are not really necessary to be a basis for division for us as Africans. But be that as it may, let us understand that as Zimbabweans, we need to fix our own problems, but we can only fix our own problems when there is good neighbor support. And we would want South Africa to help us, Botswana to help us, Zambia, Namibia, Mozambique to help us so that we help ourselves. And that has been our simple ask. It's not a big ask.
Yeah, and I think you can see in Botswana they're at the end of their tether, busing illegal immigrants back into Zimbabwe. And I think in this conversation we'd be remiss not to state the distinction, and a very important distinction, between illegal immigrants and those who are here legally, because somewhere in the conversation that distinction gets blurred somewhat. So for those people who are leaving Zimbabwe because the situation on the ground is untenable and they enter these neighboring countries illegally without the right documentation, fraudulently, what's to be done, Nelson Chamisa?
Well, I must say that it's unfortunate to even use those strong terms like illegality. As a lawyer, I know what it means, and also fraudulently. And you are correct in characterizing it as such. But just to say that we have very desperate circumstances in Zimbabwe. What we would wish to see is to see a breather. And I've already made a request to the relevant authorities in South Africa to say, why don't you give some kind of a breather to brothers and sisters from Zimbabwe who have some very difficult circumstances until we fix our own problems. And we have just about 10 months to fix our problems through an election. But also the ANC, other political parties in South Africa, EFF, DA, and other progressive groups to support Zimbabweans in their call for free and fair elections. We're already in the election season. ZANU-PF are back into their default mode of violence, of terrorism, of coercion and intimidation. We want to see the solidarity from South Africa to dissuade ZANU-PF from doing these kinds of things. In the past, we have seen that ZANU-PF are kid-gloved and treated with a very fair and kind hand when they are treating fellow citizens in a bad way. So the answer is to a two-pronged one. Number one, give some breathing space for Zimbabweans for a period of time. Number two, and regularize the papers that may need to be regularized until that time. Number two, deal with the political situation in Zimbabwe so that Zimbabweans are given the right to choose a leadership of their choice.
I mean, I don't want to belabor the immigration issue, and I do want us to go to the elections after this question, but I just want to push back a little bit there, where you say this is an unfortunate use of terminology. Unfortunately, South Africans have reached the highest point of agitation, and it has become important to distinguish between Zimbabweans who've come to South Africa legally and still need their documents renewed, reviewed, and those who haven't, because the issue is that people coming into a country purely as economic refugees is not sufficient, and my understanding is there isn't even provision for it in the law. You either come here as a refugee and a political asylum seeker because there is persecution or war in your country, or you're not here. And so South Africans are saying, we are being asked to give whom a breather? People who don't like their president, who don't like their economy. We've got high unemployment, over 35% in South Africa. South Africans need a breather.
Well, no. It's a debate that can rage on. But in Zimbabwe, it's not by choice that Zimbabweans have to be exposed to such indignities and such, inhuman and degrading treatment. We are not bad people as Zimbabweans. We are peace-loving. We are very patient. And I'm sure you will agree that most Zimbabweans are very smart and courteous. We are not criminals. We are not indecent people. I've made this point that we are really good neighbors. The fact that people cross the river Limpopo is not because it's a choice or we just want to be a nuisance to our neighbors in South Africa or Botswana. It's because circumstances have dictated. And circumstances are not about our hate to the leader of a country or a president. It's actually political circumstances and economic circumstances that have made it impossible for this place to be habitable. This is not the first time that nations have been visited by mischief and misfortune. It can happen tomorrow to South Africa, just like it happened when there was apartheid. And you know that most of the leaders, would come from South Africa and be in Zimbabwe, housed by Zimbabwe. You can ask President Thabo Mbeki, he will tell you this. You can ask many other leaders who were here in Zimbabwe, who understand that we have always lived on Africanness, Ubuntu, dignity, humanity. When one is in trouble, they help each other. When our house is on fire, we'll make sure that we temporarily house you as a neighbor.
Yeah.
That is the kind of treatment we've always had, and we are not trying to ask something that's impossible. You know, we are circumstantially challenged and would want the support of our neighbors. If we had the UK as our neighbor or China as our neighbor, we would do the same.
Yeah. Okay.
Unfortunately, but of course, thank God, we are South Africa, fellow Africans, who would understand our circumstances better.
Right. And of course, the history of the frontline states and exiles being housed in Lusaka and given land. And even we're told that every Friday, children would have to bring a little portion of their pocket money to donate towards a South Africa kitty as part of the solidarity movement. So we're well aware of that, Nelson Chamisa.
Thank you very much. Yes. It is well, and we really appreciate. These are the things that we really have to appreciate. And I'm glad that you are even eloquent and articulate in appreciating this issue.
Okay.
And this is our plea to our brothers and sisters in South Africa to say, please bear with us as we try to resolve our, very complicated problems. You know that we are dealing with a with a liberation movement that has abandoned all the ideals of liberation. And that's our challenge. Okay. In South Africa, it appears to be a simple matter, but it's a very complex challenge. But we'll overcome it.
Let's move this conversation along to this fraternity that you're referring to, this brotherhood that's existed when South Africans were facing this bastion that is apartheid, and the country just felt like a pariah alone, and Southern Africa came to the help of many liberation movements inside South Africa, and sort of the favor that's being returned right now. The way people see it is that the favor is not even now based on fraternity. It's actually the ANC or members of the ANC enabling ZANU-PF to continue with its alleged malfeasance, repression, dominance, and just bad governance. What do you say to that?
Well, I must also be the first one up front to say that Zimbabwean problems are going to be solved by Zimbabweans. We don't expect a messiah from outside, from anywhere, to come and help us. That said, I must also emphasize that there has been a very impossible situation where our neighbors have chosen to listen to ZANU-PF's voice more than the voices of the oppressed. The solidarity of South Africa, or the ANC in particular, should not be a solidarity with a political party or an institution. It should actually be a solidarity with the people. A solidarity with an institution is problematic. ZANU-PF has become a crocodile liberator. They've abandoned all ideals of liberation. They are now an oppressor, strictly speaking. They've literally borrowed lock, stock, and barrel, hook, line, and sinker, the strategies that were being used by the Smith-Rhodesian regime or by the apartheid system. They've become the black apartheid against their own citizens. And this is why they should not get any solidarity. Let the solidarity be a solidarity of the people with the people of Zimbabwe so that we are supported. The fraternity, the conviviality must be amongst the people, not the leaders.
If I asked you to give me an itemized bill, a brief one, paint for us the picture of how desperate the situation is on the ground, because there's some economic issues there, 90% unemployment, for instance. There's some political issues there. You've referred to being terrorized, the terrorism, state-sponsored. What exactly is this condition on the ground in Zimbabwe that is completely untenable for people to tolerate or try to tolerate?
Economically, I will tell you that we don't have a currency of our own. We are using some fictional currency called RTGS, and of course multiple currencies, including the rand. And so you have multiple pricing in the shops. Prices skyrocket every day. There is corruption that is rampant. In fact, corruption has become a religion in all the organs and institutions of the state. I bet you have problems with corruption in South Africa, but I think in terms of corruption, no party, no government beats our own in terms of their conduct when it comes to shady dealing, cartels, and state capture, which is quite a serious issue. So economically, the unemployment is above 95%. Many people have not known, what being employed is or owning a pay slip. Many people have never known a job. In fact, they do not understand what hire purchase is or a lay-by. These are normal things. Many people have never seen, a credit card. They've never seen, a bank where you can go and withdraw an ATM, where you can withdraw money. They don't understand these things, and particularly in the rural areas. So the situation is untenable economically. It is so bad. Infrastructure obviously is a challenge, collapsing, and you look at your health facilities. That's why you find a lot of the people in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, they are not there because it's a tourist excursion or some kind of luxurious pursuit. It's actually to try and save life.
Okay.
So it's a difficult situation.
Very briefly, because we've got a news headline, if the situation is so unbearable, why don't Zimbabweans use their power of vote and power of protest to edge this regime out of the way?
Well, I'm sure you know the meaning of repression. People have lost lives on account of protests in this country. You know what happened with the shooting of innocent citizens, guns being used on citizens. You know the experience of apartheid. It's the same thing that we have here. So Zimbabweans continue to protest, they continue to demonstrate, they continue to freely and peacefully ask for good governance, but the challenges continue. In terms of voting at the political front, there is a huge problem with repression in the countryside where traditional leaders are being abused and being commandeered into a command voting, into a regimented voting, forcing people to vote, or if they don't vote, then the certain privileges are going to be withdrawn by government. It's a big challenge, but we are fighting it. It's not insurmountable. We are ready for the task, and we are providing leadership in the alternative to deal with that.
Well,